It is essential to step out of the Western-centric perspective. Without doing so, it's impossible to truly understand the history of the past 500 years, to correctly comprehend the West of today. Moreover, and more importantly, it's impossible to accurately understand China itself. For the past 100, most of our intellectuals have been blindly interpreting the West, deeming everything from there as correct. For the reasons behind this, they may be unknown, but in reality, this approach is not correct. In my understanding, Western social science is actually a product of the success of the Western industrial and scientific revolutions. We usually say that sociology emerged with Marx and Weber, right? In the 1890s, Germany had already industrialized. So it emerged after industrialization, right? Yes, so I am from the field of social science, right? I constantly remind myself to be wary of a few things. Firstly, there's a problem with the inductive reasoning in Western social sciences. Aren't Western social sciences a summary of collective behaviors and collective psychology of Europeans and Americans? As I mentioned earlier, the population of Europe and America is quite small, right? They actually represent only about 1/8. They are a very small group of people, and then you generalize based on them. The key point is that claiming this represents the behavioral patterns of the entire world is definitely incorrect. This logic is flawed. The subject of their generalization is partial, not holistic. Isn't that a problem? You must be clear about this. I believe many of us here have earned degrees both internationally and domestically, and most likely in the field of social sciences. It's important to note that Western social sciences emerged only after their industrialization success. The theories and concepts they developed are based on the collective behaviors and psychology of Western populations, not a generalization of all humanity. You see, take China, for example, with its vast population. They weren't included in these Western generalizations. Therefore, these theories are quite limited, aren't they? Generalization is just the first step, followed by deduction. If your generalization is incomplete, how can you confidently claim to represent all of humanity? Wouldn't that be problematic? In Western social science, there's a strong sense of serving the West. It's a tool developed by Western national and social capital for their own benefit. Hence, its interpretations are invariably favorable to the West, leading to a rather absurd situation. Throughout its development, the West engaged in extremely brutal external expansions, including the Crusades and the expansion across the world following the Age of Discovery. I have calculated that in the 100 years after the Age of Discovery, the overseas territories seized by Europeans expanded to 11 sides. Following the geographical discoveries, Europe's territory suddenly increased by 11 times. The area of Europe, not very large to begin with, is about 10,160,000 square kilometers, just 56,000 more than China's 9,600,000. To put it in perspective, Europe is only larger than China by an area equivalent to Sichuan province. So Europe is not that large. We consider Europe as one unit. And then, if you think about it, North America is basically two Europes. In North America, I include Mexico, along with the United States and Canada, which together are a bit more than two Europes. Then there's South America, which includes Central America and the Caribbean, right? It's 3 Europes. You know that, right? So that's 5 Europes, a little more actually. The excess part is allocated to Australia, which is a bit smaller than Europe. So the extra from North and South America is counted towards it, making it 6 Europes, right? Next is Africa, which is 3.3 Europes. So are we at 9.3 now? Then there's North Asia, dominated by Russia. You see, Western Europe's neighbors prospered by the Atlantic Ocean, right? But Russia, located by the Arctic Ocean, didn't have the opportunity to join in the age of exploration and colonialism. So Russia expanded overland, crossing the Ural Mountains, right? They occupied the whole of North Asia, which is vast. This includes northern and southern Caucasus, Siberia, the Far East, and the Central Asian countries. It's nearly 19 million square kilometers, roughly 1.8 Europes. 0.8, doesn't that exceed 11 Europes? Isn't it a basic fact that they, through means like plundering and the like, achieved primitive accumulation and then rose to power? This process is very cruel, but note that this extremely brutal and violent process is described by Hayek as a spontaneous market formation process. Then, a bunch of foolish Chinese scholars, including you entrepreneurs, don't you worship him excessively? Isn't he a bad person? Isn't it a distortion of history? Isn't he a bad person who described massacres as natural evolution and beautified them? Then, facing the advantages of both sides, especially the commercial advantages supported by state violence, what should non-Western countries do? Of course, you rely on national power to resist, otherwise, how could you win, right? A small child fighting against a 30-year-old strongman can't win. Your parents definitely have to help. Then these foolish scholars, a bunch of foolish Chinese scholars, worshipped him and regarded his words as the gospel. He's bad and you're foolish, aren't you? It's even mainstream in our academic circles, isn't it? If you don't break out of this, how can China rise? It won't be able to rise, and neither will your entrepreneurs. I'm telling you, you'll always be second-class citizens in the American system. Look, you're working overtime every day, $9.96. By the way, part of the wealth of Chinese entrepreneurs is the hard-earned money of the people, you know? And then the profits are all taken away by others, right? For instance, products like smartphones. Isn't it unfair that half of the profits go to Apple? And you still think you're comfortable with this? Aren't you foolish? You must break this system. This is the basic factual situation. The entire Western academic system has problems in its induction. So first, it's not scientific. Second, its service consciousness is too strong. Like the international relations, the entire West clearly serves the hegemony of the United States. And most Chinese scholars just echo others, blindly adopting their theories, thinking that this is independent thinking. They even explain to the West saying this is independent consciousness. These fools, right? The West wants you to criticize the Communist Party, to criticize the Chinese government, and you just follow suit, calling this social conscience. You haven't even finished primary school properly, turning conscience upside down.